Okay, Rolf, I start now.
Good morning and welcome to the Improvement Cafe in our MOOC, Improvement Fundamentals. And welcome. I hope you have grabbed a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and will follow us today for 30 minutes, listening to two special guests who will talk to you today. And we will listen to Annette Nilsson and Jill Lockhart, who's coming here. And you are welcome to ask questions and use either Twitter or the chat box here on our WebEx page. And they will answer your questions after they have spoken. And I will also say that you can use, you have to use the hashtag QI Hikers. Hashtag QI Hikers, as usual. And let's get on to it at once, and I'll leave the floor, you could say, or the screen to my colleague Annette Nilsson.
Hello, everybody. My name is Annette Nilsson, and I work as a development strategist in the region Jönköping. I have had the opportunity to work at Kulturum, the innovation center in Jönköping, for many years with quality improvement, leadership, and both improvement in local, regional, and national and international level. Very interested in big scale change, where I also had the opportunity to be working national for 3.5 years in a big agreement between the government and the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions. And today I really look forward to share some thoughts with you, and I'm very happy to have your questions, your experiences and thoughts on this. Because with all humble, spread is really, really interesting, but also really hard to understand when do we really make it happen. But I have some key points from where I think spread is good to have with you when you work with this. So I will start with my key points. And the first point is design for spread from the beginning. What is the problem? What do we really want to fix? Sometimes I could see during my years working in this area, we fall in love with an idea, we talk about what we want to do, we talk about how will we do it, what methods and tools will we use, and we do everything very good in that. But the why in the middle, it feels not so clear. And I have learned during my years that it is really important to start with the why. Why should we do this change? What is the need for this change? And talk with many people so we get many perspectives on the need. And also try to understand how big is the need? What do we want to accomplish? How many people will be influenced by the change? Will it be just one team in one unit, or all team in one unit, or all team in all units? Will it be 3 hospitals, 5 hospitals, 47 primary cares? To really do the map from the beginning and have a picture of how big is the need for this change and in what area. So design for spread from the beginning. Talk with many people from different perspectives who will be influenced by the change. Ask for their wisdom, their thoughts, their stories, and really be clear. Why should we do this? What do we try to accomplish? And write it down and really focus on why are we doing this. I will go to, can we have the other slide I have? Is that possible? Thank you. When I worked in this national program with the leadership program, I had the opportunity to cooperate with Sarah Fraser, who is an expert in big scale change from England, and she come up with this metaphor who I really, really like. When we start to work with improvements, and when we have, it's the metaphor about the cake. And when we only have ingredients, we start, maybe we have a need, we need to do something, and we start with small tests, and we have no idea how will this work out. But when we have done this small test, we come to the next zone. The cake is half baked. We need to try the cake in more context and learn more about it. And then when we have done that, we come to the full baked cake. Now it's baked. Now it's ready for spread. What is your problem? Personalize the concept, makes it suit your specific context, and implement for all. And for me, this has been a good learning and experience that have this on my mind from the beginning. Because sometimes I could see when teams start to work, they get a little frustrated where they have a really, really good example, but it's so hard to really, really get it spread. And so my experience is really look at this metaphor and see what we now are going to do with this. Have we already baked cake so we can spread that and implement for all, or is it just half baked so we need to have more knowledge, or is it only ingredients? I can take my first slide again, thank you. Is it possible to have my key points? Thank you. So what I also will add to that metaphor is show me the numbers. That is also something I learned during my years in this area. Sometimes we do one really, really good example, and we talk so much about that example, so we start to believe we have done it everywhere. And what I learned is we really, really need to have a map. How much has the change influenced? And I believe a lot thinking from the patient's perspective, thinking from the inhabitant's perspective, and always see it from their lenses. And we talk about equal care and support. How can we see if this change is not just working to specific people, it is working to everyone, every moment, where it should be working. So show me the numbers and really have the effect of the change. And during that show me the number, also catch up with all these stories. Ask many people about what is your stories around this. Bring people in so they feel I am proud of being part of this improvement. And this is the way where I could see it makes a difference. So storytelling and connected to show me the numbers. So I will end with that behavioral change. That was what we could see in the big scale change for elderly people I mentioned. Behavioral change can go quick. We could see it is quite possible to really do a behavioral change during short time, but culture change takes time. So it is a lot about keep on going and really, really have this interest to see we really want this to be there so we can be sure it will be sustained. And I will end with to say I have written a report, Ledningskraft, about designing management support in large-scale change. And if someone is interested, Rolf will try to make a link to that if you want it virtual. So I think I stopped there so I could have more than for the discussion with your questions and your reflections. So thank you for me.
Thank you, Annette. And the name of her report is in English, The Power of Leadership, I think, or something like that. And I can put a link on our web, the MOOC's web, in the MOOC, where we will save this recording from this meeting, this cafe. And now I would like to go over to our next guest speaker, who is Jill Lockard. Welcome, Jill, and I hand it over to you to talk.
Thank you, Rob. Can everybody hear me?
We can see your pictures, yes?
if you can hear me as well. Well, good morning, everybody.
We can hear you. We can hear you also. Sorry. So go ahead, please.
Okay. I work for
Jill, I'm really sorry to interrupt. It's Callie here. Just to let you know that we can hear that you are speaking, but we can't hear what you're saying. It sounds like you're in a really bad location, and we cannot hear what you're saying at all.
Okay, can you hear me now, Callie?
Oh gosh, yes, that's so much better. Yes, please.
I
Please
think it's my...
continue. Thank you.
Right, okay. Sorry for that, everybody. I'm a physiotherapist by background, and I worked for very many years in the clinical environment, very often trying to make improvements, and a lot of the time not being very successful, particularly in terms of getting something that was going to be a sustainable change or staying spread. And then I came into the improvement world about 8 years ago, and all of a sudden I started to learn and become far more aware of all the things that actually are there to help you do that, and all the mistakes I made, and actually really wishing I'd known far more about that when I was trying to do it in the real world. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you some very quick practical examples that really back up and support what Annette's already said this morning, to hopefully just help them at the back of your mind when you start doing some improvement work, because it's really easy to get very carried away with getting on with making a change, and sometimes it's thinking about it first and that actually could do with a little bit more work. So if I could have my next slide, please. Okay, so the top tips that I'm going to say, I'll start at the end. Sounds a bit peculiar, but what that means is, as Annette said, think about what it is you're really trying to do. Now, I can think of some really good examples in clinical practice where I've worked with teams of particularly therapists trying to deliver 7-day services, working across the 7-day service agenda. And I can think of in one place where the therapists got together and they talked about why are we really doing this? What is it we want to achieve? What we really want to achieve is we want to get to the place where every patient can have an assessment the day they come into hospital with their stroke, and we can continue treating them. So when they had their discussions, what they were asking staff to do was to make a significant change in how they worked, but they were doing it because the outcome would be that patients would get treatment on the day they came in and they'd start their rehab immediately, which is the right thing to do. So although it was challenging, they had a very good reason for what they were doing. They got good buy-in. I can think of another place where they wanted the same thing, but they talked about having 7-day services. They talked about we must work on 7 days. They didn't actually stop and think about what it really was, because it wasn't about 7 days. Really, it was about making sure that care was timely. But because they framed it in that manner all the way through, it was really difficult to get engagement. There were people who did their utmost to actually stop the process from working, really. And I remember sitting in a meeting where somebody quite senior said, we'll have 7-day services over my dead body. I take my daughter for pony riding lessons on a Saturday, and I'm not going to stop that. And now in reality, nobody's going to ask her to do that, but her fear and her anxieties, because of the way it was framed, because they couldn't get to really understanding what it was they wanted at that point, it took them a lot longer to get anything to happen, and there was always that underlying possibility that as soon as the focus and spotlight was off of that service, things would go back the way they were, or it wouldn't happen because they hadn't really got the buy-in. So it's really important that you get the outcomes really clear, and it may be that you have to frame your outcomes differently for different audiences or different stakeholders, because you're going to need them to buy in and to work with you as the process goes on, and I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a moment. Similarly, there's something about using good tools. There's a fantastic tool called the Sustainability Toolkit. The idea is that as you're setting up and you're planning how you're going to make your change, you run it through this toolkit. You run it through a series of questions where you rate yourself and your plans against different elements. And it will tell you the likelihood of success of your project in terms of sustainability. And it's really easy to do. The trick is when you do it. I can think of some teams I worked with a few years ago where we suggested to them they did this, and some of them said yes, but they were so keen on getting on with their change that they said, we'll do it later. Well, once the project's over, we'll do it then, because that's when we'll be thinking about sustaining it. Another team looked at it They took time out to look at it, and they saw that they had quite a significant flaw in what they were going to do, because the sustainability tool told them that they were not going to deliver a sustainable end result. So they had to have more discussions. They actually engaged their chief exec. They got a fantastic bit of IT kit and a new dashboard as a result of having those discussions that meant that their project went better, their improvement was more successful, but also it was sustainable, and everybody else wanted a piece of it afterwards. So other parts of the therapy service beyond stroke started wanting to know what they were doing and how they were doing it, and so they started to get spread, and people were curious as to how they'd made that happen. So there's something about using the right tools at the right point in time. Similarly, there are lots of tools to help you around stakeholder engagement and understanding of stakeholders, and it's really worth investing some time in those. It's very easy to think, oh, well, I know who my stakeholders are, but actually really taking time out to examine that is important, because you need to know why your stakeholders are your stakeholders. I know that sounds silly, but sometimes they're your stakeholders because they're your patients. Now it's really important, because patients are a very, very powerful stakeholder, and taking time out to listen to what they want, because you might think you know out of your improvement what the change may be, but investing that time and energy in having the right discussions with people, framing those discussions in ways that allow open conversations and their true engagement, rather than a token sending people out questionnaire kind of level of engagement, can really shape and inform what you do to increase the chances of what you do being successful and being something that those people want. Because if you deliver a change and you haven't engaged your patients and people in it, they're not going to want to buy in. It's not going to be sustainable. They won't work with it, and it won't spread. Similarly, your stakeholders might be in finance. They might be commissioners. Now, very often we don't tend to think about commissioners when we're working in clinical environments, because they're those nasty people who never give us enough money. But in reality, we need to think about how we can make our case to them, how we can share with them in words and language that they understand the value of what we're doing. Because if we do it right and it's successful and we can make that connection with them, they are more likely to continue that funding, they are more likely to open doors to widen that, or it may well be that it will support the next change and therefore help spread. So if you understand why people are your stakeholders, where they're coming from, the language they speak, and frame what you're doing in ways that they understand. Don't make the mistake of assuming that everybody knows what you do because you know what you do, because most people don't. Similarly, there's something around nurturing your champions. You know, we'd all find champions in various different places. Sometimes it might be a really good nurse on a ward. Sometimes it's somebody in another part of the country who's doing that work as well. And nurture those champions. Nurture the people around you who can tell your story, who can take it elsewhere, who can build that engagement and interest, who can have the conversation at lunchtime with a group of other people and say, you know, this is really wonderful what my colleague is doing with da-da-da-da-da, and really get other people to want to know about it, because they're valuable for a long time, and you won't make your improvement on your own. You need people to help you if you're going to look at something that's sustainable. And people power is really, really vital. I can think of a particular piece of work that some colleagues were doing where they wanted to develop an early supported discharge service. And it was going to have quite significant impacts on a local community hospital. That was lovely. Staff were lovely. It was fantastic. But actually, early supported discharge would be a better option in terms of outcomes for people than staying in a community hospital for rehabilitation after their stroke. They had a big meeting. Lots of people spoke. They processed, mapped everything. And the staff were very proud of their community hospital. They spoke about it in great detail. And then all of a sudden, a patient's wife spoke up and said, do you know, my husband had brilliant care when he was in your hospital. It was lovely. But if I had known, or if there was a possibility that he could have come home and the services could have come to us at home, although it would have been difficult and we would have had a struggle with you know, all those people coming in and out, it would have been much better if he'd been at home. No offence, but it would have been lovely if he could have been at home. And that changed the tone of the discussions, that changed how they were able to get the buy-in, that enabled them to look at taking their process forward and making changes that were really going to work and help towards delivering a really sustainable early supported discharge service. That conversation changed the tone in ways that umpteen board papers or presenting the evidence from literature or clinical trials would have done. So never underestimate the power of having a patient story or a patient perspective in terms of sustainability. And lastly, very quickly around data. It's important that you have good data and you have the right data. You can think of a couple of teams who are looking at 7-day services. Stroke, they both collected data that showed that with their change, patients got an assessment within 1 day of being admitted to hospital, which was fantastic. They kept slightly different additional pieces of data as well, and when we went in and analysed, one service had provided additional staff at the weekend. So actually, when we looked at their data, the service not only changed in terms of access to treatment, admission to treatment time, it also had a positive impact on the number of treatment opportunities patients got. The other service, they redistributed existing staff across 7 days. They achieved the outcome, which was patients were assessed within 24 hours, but the service fell apart in other respects. So it's really important that you collect good data that's really going to show the impacts of what you do. It doesn't have to be big and fancy, but make sure you collect the right information to really see whether or not what you do is delivering what you think, and it's not actually creating other problems in other parts of the system. And lastly, about diversity. In the same way that you have to speak different languages to your stakeholders, you need to share what you've done, share the change that you've made in as many different ways as you can so that it resonates with different audiences. In Cornwall, they've done this really well. They've got a big transformation programme that they're looking at, and part of it will have impact on local community hospitals. They may need to close. A community hospital is something people are really passionate about. But they've looked at campaigns in recruiting community champions. They've looked at having a regular column in the newspaper. Now, those are big and grand, but you can do that in more local ways with newsletters. You can go to board meetings. You can make patient videos. You can do all sorts of things to show your success in different ways, to encourage other people to come on board or to want to do it in their patch. Right, I'm going to stop now because I said an awful lot really quickly.
Yes, thank you so much, Gia. That was really interesting and helpful and very specific about things. So I think that makes us help on things in a very good way, you could say. I think we are running out of time, so I'll go over to the question and answering session now. And we already have got some questions here. If I can read. There is a question for you, Jill. Do we include the storytellers from the beginning of the improvement project? From the beginning of the improvement project? What's your idea about that? The storytellers, or the how do we use that?
So, Annette, are you going to answer that, or is that for me, Rolf?
That's for you, Jill.
Okay, I think you need to have them as part of your stakeholder group. They need to be in there from the beginning, and that might mean, you know, sometimes some difficult conversations for other people to be part of because they're not necessarily used to having people who are patients sitting alongside them talking about services. But I would include them from the beginning and follow through their journey as part of the work. And then you can then ask those patients to share that information in a variety of ways. It can be in a blog. You know, that could be really helpful at a blog. It can be something in your regular newsletter that they write or that they contribute. It could be patients who want to make a video diary as they go along. All of those sorts of things. Because actually, on the whole, people want to be engaged. They want to be part of things because they've got a story to tell. And so I would say include them, be as creative as you can, do whatever makes that person's brain tick, you know, go with the media that works for them. And yes, include them from the beginning. Don't wait till afterwards.
Okay. Is that the same with the change champions?
I think the change
Yeah,
so the change champions can come from anywhere, because your change champions could be the patients, or they could be. I think very often they're, in my experience, they've been the nurses on the ward. You know, sometimes, certainly as a therapist, you can have quite an uphill battle trying to make change, because very often it involves other people having to change how they work as well. But if you can find your change champions, they could be a nurse somewhere, they could be somebody who sits in the community, who drives the community bus that brings the patients to the place where you treat them, or who takes patients to a clinic. It could be a receptionist in a clinic who's the change champion, because they see what's happening. They could come from anywhere.
Yeah, that's so true. I think I agree with you. Can I ask Annette about almost the same questions? How do you engage the employees or the stakeholders, you could say, perhaps? How do you engage them? Yes, Annette?
I think, thank you, Jill. Interesting to listen to you. And I think my experience is quite similar what you say, to really be interested in the people's stories and don't think as you as a facilitator or an improvement leader or manager have all the answers. Really be interested in the people who should be involved. What do they see? What is their stories? And also in the national project, we have a journalist who wrote stories both from the patient's perspective and from the employer's perspective and from different perspectives in the system. So we got this many lenses to look for this. And I also think we should not underestimate the importance of marketing, how you sell message. And the more we can be clear, I really like one-liners, where we could have it very short and where people could feel this is something behind this one-liner, I can use it. We have training a lot to have this elevator speak, what we say when we are in the elevator, we could tell someone else what is this about. So to really training people to, during they doing something in their journey, to see what they are part of and to put words on that. Because the language is also part of the improvement of the change. If you don't have words for what you are doing, it's hard to tell others. They will just think, well, it's something they are involved in. So I believe that is also good things to think about, how to really build capacity by this plan.
Okay. I see that also there are others who like what you have said, Jill and Annette, about this. I think what I think of is what we do with our Esther project is that we always have the patient in focus and ask what's best for Esther. When you talk about engaging patients, what's best for Esther, and not only asking what's the matter with you. Instead, you should ask what matters to you. It could be more than just getting the medical things fixed. There are other things. She wants perhaps to be at home, or she wants perhaps have a cat or a dog while being treated. So you have to try to find other ways to make it easy also to have the sort of a one-liner also in your thinking, I think, as Annette just said. We go on to, there is a question here about any advice of engaging staff in social care in improvement work, such as the frontline staff in care homes, who may be experiencing low morale. Do you have any advice about that, Jill?
Okay, I was just having a go at putting that in the chat box, but I'll speak. Yes, I think that what you describe, I recognise that, because I think I've been in that situation myself, and I speak to people who are trying to work in those environments, and it's very difficult. Sometimes it's about how you build a relationship. If you've started to build a relationship with them, if you are, regular in the connections you have with them, if you take time to talk to them, if you support them, I mean, sometimes it can be as simple as when you're in your care home helping them with another patient to do something. So they actually start to see you as an individual, as a useful person, build a bit of a relationship, because then you can start to have the conversations around, so, how do you feel about things? What do you think we could do that would make a difference? And try and establish some common purpose, some common vision, some common ground about where people are coming from and what their thinking is, and work from that basis. Because once you've got a shared vision, a shared idea of what you're trying to do, then that will help you start to think about how you might want to frame your change, or how you might need to go about it in different ways or in a different order. But it's about getting the connections, not exactly an emotional connection, but getting a connection in terms of values with people. But it's not easy, and it's not always something that you can do quickly.
Well, thank you, that's helpful. Annette wants to add something.
Yes, I just want to say, I think to really identify good behavioral and talk about them and talk about it like this is the way we're doing it, so people feel it's easy to sign in and be part of the good moral and to be part of the good way we are doing things, and really put the proudness in there to people who are at the front line. What you are doing is amazing, and how can you always do this in a good way, and really talk the stories who really, so people see and know when are we in the good areas and field and when are we not. So that will be also a lot about values in everyday work, and I believe that is really important for the whole culture. It's all about people, so keep on going. That's my last message.
Thank you, Annette. That's also very helpful. I think we're running out of time, so I think we have to do so that we continue the discussion on Twitter, and everyone can have comments and points and answer what we write there. And also, if as a participant in the MOOC, continue to write in your reflective journal and in the discussion forums there also. And if you're still on Module 2, don't give up. We still have until the end of December to work with the course, and you can assess it all the time, and then you can post your posters and the other things to get a certificate if you're interested for that. And you can read more about that in Cheryl's chat. So I think we're just about 30 minutes now, so I have to say thank you so much for listening, and goodbye for this time. And finally, I will also say thank you to my colleagues who have helped me to finish this sending on YouTube and on WebEx. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yes, please, Callie, we're done. You can drop the attendees and stop the recording.
Have you stopped the recording now?